Hey everybody, Schildhouse here, and I wanted to talk about the controversy surrounding this week's Coke Series race from Charlotte Motor Speedway. If you're unfamiliar with what happened, it wasn't a connection issue like what we saw back at Homestead earlier this season, but instead a distinct aerodynamic disadvantage for any driver using the Chevrolet Camaro Cup Series car. Approximately an hour before the race started, iRacing was alerted by its competitors that the Chevy Camaro was experiencing a different reaction to dirty air than the Ford Mustang and Toyota Camry. With so little time between when iRacing was alerted about this issue and the race's start time, iRacing decided that the show had to go on, and the race took place as planned, putting any driver who was using a Chevy Camaro in the unenviable position of knowing they were entering that race effectively beaten before they even took the green flag. Further adding to the speculation about the issue was the decision by some Chevrolet teams, such as McLaren Shadow, to run a Ford Mustang for that event instead. Teams switching manufacturers for a race is an unprecedented thing to see in the Coke Series, namely because many of these teams have already formed an alliance with the manufacturer, and there's a lot of money at stake, so these relationships are paramount. It didn't take long for the problem to become evident not just to the drivers, but also the viewing audience who were watching the official broadcast, as a number of Chevy drivers were shown to be outside of the top 20 very early in the race. Now, to be completely transparent with you, I am a spotter for Kligerman Sport, a Chevrolet-backed team participating in the Coke Series. My driver, Isaac Gann, shared his feedback on lap 4 of the race about what he was experiencing in the Chevrolet during this race under the first caution that was brought out by, you guessed it, another Chevrolet losing control because of an aerodynamic deficiency. All right. Everyone wants to know, so Isaac, if you'd like to explain it in layman's terms.
So here's the deal, everybody. The Chevy is broke, and we're running this race. All the Fords and the Toyotas have a massive aerodynamic advantage over the Chevys because the coating is messed up. So I'm in a Chevy, and I'm going to get yeeted by all these guys around me because, you know, they're all not in Chevys. And that's what you saw there. I just washed up the track and was getting destroyed by everybody around me.
So there you go. iRacing broke it.
So there you have it, everybody.
If you're in a bow tie, you're having a bad time. As of the recording of this video, iRacing has still not publicly acknowledged this issue, either on their official Twitter account or on their website and in their user forums. However, iRacing did send out an internal communication to Coke Series drivers and teams admitting that there was, in fact, a difference in the aerodynamic tables for the Chevy Camaro. iRacing said that they have addressed this issue and remedied it in a hotfix that was deployed today, May 26, 2021. All we can do is infer that iRacing is not going to publicly acknowledge this issue and instead has decided to admit its mistake simply by adding the remedy into an already planned hotfix for this week. Even while reading the patch notes for this hotfix, it's impossible to discern from the language used that there was even a performance disadvantage being experienced across the entire service. But the fact that only the Chevrolet received this adjustment tells you everything you need to know. The internal document from iRacing also states that, quote, inadvertently, a future version of the Aero model was put on the car a few weeks ago, end quote. This is particularly troubling for the general population of racers because they were affected by this and going into official races with an unknown disadvantage. What makes this situation even more troubling is that unlike the connection issues seen at Homestead during the Coke Series race, this problem affects everybody across the service, not just Coke Series drivers. What this really means is that if you use the Chevy Camaro for anything on the service between the last hotfix on May 17th, 2021 and the hotfix put out today, you were driving at a disadvantage, a sizable disadvantage to those using the Ford Mustang and Toyota Camry. So think of any time you ran a fixed, a open, NIS, Carb Cup, or a league race. If you were running the Cup Series Camaro, you were at a disadvantage for the last week. And perhaps now that you hear that and start to think about it, it makes sense why you may have struggled. We go into races with an assurance from iRacing that real-life variables such as aerodynamics, engine power, and chassis characteristics are identical across all three makes of cars, so that no matter which one you choose, Ford, Toyota, or Chevrolet, you are not going to be at a competitive disadvantage because of your choice. And unfortunately, for a period of time, unbeknownst to us, that assurance was fundamentally broken. I feel for the community members who didn't even know about this issue and still may not know about this issue, which is most likely a large percentage of the player base. That's why I'm making this video, not just to report on a colossal failure and how poorly it was handled by iRacing, but to educate and inform everybody else out there who may not even know about this very serious issue that took place inside of our community. While the problem is now resolved, that doesn't absolve iRacing of accountability for what happened or how it took action after the fact. I talked about this situation during my live stream after the Coke Series race for a long period of time, and it was a great conversation. The community was really engaged. It was very positive, and I think it was very eye-opening to sit there and talk about it very candidly and see so much positive reception to that, and see other people talk about their sentiment, their perception, their feelings about such a serious oversight and failure. It's hard to take the way that this has been handled by iRacing as anything other than trying to sweep it under the rug, along with many of the other mistakes and questionable decisions that they've made over the years. I've long compared iRacing to EA Sports and the Madden franchise. EA has enjoyed a monopoly on simulation football for a long time and has no competition in that market whatsoever. So all it has to do is the bare minimum to pump out a new game every year and suffer no consequences because there's simply no alternative for their consumers to go and buy. iRacing similarly enjoys a monopoly on simulated NASCAR racing. And with no competitor to take its player base away, they operate accordingly. Competition pushes companies to innovate, to earn the business of its consumers, and at the end of the day, to create the best product possible. This space has long suffered from an absence of competition, and iRacing's general approach to the community reflects that. To cap off the absurdity of iRacing's perspective on this issue, that internal document concluded by saying, quote, "There are many intricacies in running the sim, and it requires the entire community working together to ensure it runs smoothly," end quote. Think about that for a minute. It's as if they're to say we, as a community, are responsible for their product working correctly. Is that really how it's supposed to work? Last time I checked, they're the developers. They're the publishers of this product, not us. We engage with their product under the assumption that they're fulfilling their responsibilities as a company to provide what we are paying for. We're not paying a subscription fee and content fees to get cars and tracks just to test their work out and provide a quality assurance for them. That's their responsibility, but history has shown their ability to do quality assurance is questionable at best. In my opinion, this internal document just shows how iRacing views its community, how it doesn't value the time investment being made by its player base, or that it doesn't believe that transparent communication is an important pillar to building a stronger community. Once the issue of a competitive disadvantage was known, at the very least, iRacing should have put out a service-wide memo warning drivers about the Chevrolet Camaro and the disadvantage that would be had until a fix was put in place. By failing to alert the community to a performance-impacting issue, iRacing has once again shown its immaturity as a company and a complete disregard for its player base. While I'm glad that iRacing was able to quickly remedy this situation, I have to question the processes that are in place to develop and implement updates if something like this can happen. I believe that this issue would have been caught much sooner if the Cup Series was at an oval last week instead of Circuit of the Americas. But at the end of the day, it is not our responsibility as a community to test their game and ensure that the updates that they roll out work correctly. Having a disadvantage is the last thing that any of us want to deal with, and the fact that it happened is unfortunate for many obvious reasons. iRacing absolutely dropped the ball with how it handled this situation, and its response, or lack thereof, is unacceptable. By sweeping this issue under the rug, iRacing invalidated countless hours put in by the teams and drivers in their premier racing series, strained relationships with sponsors and partners, and chose to avoid taking responsibility by quietly slipping the remedy in an already planned patch and not commenting on it afterwards. I believe that this community deserves better, but this is just my take on the situation. I would love to know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. Has iRacing handled this situation appropriately, or do they need to do better? If you used the Chevy Camaro before this hotfix rolled out and you couldn't understand why you were struggling with it, how do you feel now knowing the truth about the situation? Again, tell me your thoughts and reactions to this down in the comment section below. I appreciate you watching this video, and we'll see you next time.